Hello,
Hello.
it's our first episode,
Yes.
the Accounting OS show.
The Accounting OS show is happening.
That's right, that's right. Who are you? Do you want to give an introduction to our audience?
Yes, of course. I am Hayat Mahmoudi, and I am the co-founder of Accounting OS.
Wonderful.
Who are you?
I am the other co-founder of Accounting OS. My name is Elias. Just a quick introduction to ourselves, I guess, given it's our first episode. We'll do some background. So the single most important, well, actually, let's start with a bit of fun fact. Loosen up our shoulders a little bit. Fun fact about me, I was born in Afghanistan. I came to the UK when I was a refugee, 6 years old, give or take. And like all good Asian boys, I went and did engineering at university because my dad didn't flee a war zone, so I could study poetry. At least that's what he likes to remind me. That's where you and I had met, of course. Did a few years in consulting, and I think that had a profound impact. I think generally, in terms of my personality, I'm not necessarily an engineer. I'm a full-time professional yapper, and I just so happen to study engineering. Consulting is very similar in that respect. I don't think I'm a consultant by trade or by heart, but I think I'm very good at consulting, specifically in the tech sector. Now, Accounting OS feels like the perfect combination of all of my professional skill sets in one, and running my own business along with you, I think does allow me to yap and get to know people and build relationships and actually own something that's our own.
I love the ownership. I mean, it feels like when you're working day to day and you have your full-time job or your persona outside of the home, it almost feels like no matter how hard you work, there's always a sort of cap that you have.
Yeah.
And you always have to have like sort of permission from stakeholders or your boss or on how to move that position forward. But for the first time, it feels like you're on your own. Figure it out. Like, this is your decision. Do you want to do this? Do you not want to do this?
Yeah.
And the consequences will just be on us. And it's almost very freeing.
It is very freeing. You're absolutely right. So that's the background to who I am. And then the single most important thing I'm working on is, of course, Accounting OS. So to set the scene to that, we automate client onboarding for UK accountants, which is very much the delivery vehicle. But the outcome behind the business is to improve visibility of the onboarding process. That's really what it boils down to. We reduce the amount of risk associated, particularly around anti-money laundering and due diligence. And then we also make the whole experience more seamless for both the client and also the accountant. That's the outcomes that we try and aim for with our clients.
So how does I know you spoke a little about how your background ties into what Accounting OS is, but in specific, what have you seen in your own personal life in terms of your career that has led you to Accounting OS? I know for the audience, we should reference that you called yourself a data translator at some point. You normally translate between very technical people and very commercial people, right? How does that tie in? What's the story?
If I think about the lessons I've learned, so this is not my first business. My first business was called Athena Virtual Tours, and we would sell media assets to gyms during COVID. And the idea was relatively straightforward. A lot of gyms wanted to stay open. They wanted to show people around, especially not just gyms, to be honest, also wedding venues. Anybody who effectively had a venue that a client wanted to see before they purchased, they would still want to do that, but because of COVID restrictions, they couldn't. So we figured we can provide some media assets, mainly 3D virtual tours. Now, that was the first instance in my life where I found fantastic product market fit, like really solid product market fit. And since then, I built businesses where there wasn't product market fit, and I didn't even know what the term product market fit was. It was just, I want to build a business. That's it, right? I want financial freedom, so to speak. When you and I started thinking about Accounting OS, before we even started thinking about onboarding or accounting or building a business like the one that we have, it started off with what the problems are. We asked ourselves, okay, who in our network has a business and what problems do they have? And it was only after constant repetition of building solutions to problems that people have that we landed on client onboarding automation. That's basically how we got there. And I don't think that would have been possible were it not for my professional background. Every single day in tech, we talk about things like minimum viable product, which if you're in tech, you'll know what that is. The idea is relatively straightforward. It's if you want to build a car, you don't build a car. You build a skateboard and make sure the skateboard works. And then if the skateboard works and great, then go build yourself a bicycle. And if the bicycle works, great, then go build yourself a car. If, for example, you don't take that approach, you take, I'm going to build a car, I need a car, I'm going to go do it. What if, for example, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months into the process of building said thing, you realize actually you never really needed a car, you needed something else completely different. Maybe what you wanted at first has changed because of the market, because of client requirements and so forth. Now you're stuck because you've spent months of work and resources and time building for something that the context has changed now. The requirements have changed. The market has changed.
And there's certain expectations as well.
Exactly. There's a lot of sunk cost associated. On the flip side, if you take the MVP, the cyclical approach, which is I'm going to build something very small and make sure every time it works by the end of it, and it might not be perfect, but it works, it means that you can constantly reassess, is this meeting the market requirement? And that's exactly what happened with us with client onboarding, right? We built the equivalent of what was Dext, showed it to directors, and they were like, I don't need it. And it was one of them that was like, well, this is good, but could you do something different, which is my client onboarding? And we're like, all right, walk us through. And those requirements that we were given was exactly how we landed on our business. And very similar to Athena Virtual Tours, the product market fit's fantastic. So much so that when we're having a conversation with somebody, it's not even like we have to really sell it. It's just, what's your onboarding?
What's the onboarding like? And then the response is like, ugh, I hate onboarding.
Exactly.
And then the conversation starts.
Yeah.
Now, speaking more about our business, right? So let's give a bit of insight what our business actually is in terms of what do we do? It starts off with the sort of discovery, right? Like the pain point. We're like, what's your onboarding like? And they list a whole bunch of problems. And then we go and we get their problems and we fix it up like a jigsaw piece, almost like we streamline the process. It's like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and we give a consultation like, this is your onboarding process, like where are the bottlenecks, where are the pain points, and then we use a sort of technology to enhance their onboarding process once it's become a streamline that they love, and that's using automation. Automation in the sense of connecting different softwares and tools to each other with one data entry point where you're connecting different APIs, different webhooks, and it becomes this one process where you don't have to manually or iteratively just stay on top of it. You can almost like have full visibility at the same time and being able to use it, which is pretty amazing. Like technology can do that.
I think what's really interesting about technology is I think it's probably the least important thing.
It is the least important thing.
Right?
Technology is like the cherry on top of a cake. It's your foundations that really matter.
Yeah. What are those foundations? Yeah.
What are the foundations? Well, if we talk about specifically in client onboarding, normally when we go into a sort of discovery call and we're having a kickoff, we spend a lot of time just streamlining the process as opposed to automating. When we started this business, we thought that automation was going to be that wow factor. And we have slowly realized that it's not. It's the sort of process that you look at in your system. Some processes are great for right now. It works today. And that's probably because you're starting out as a business, but they don't scale very well. And then there comes a day where it just doesn't work. This has become a pain point and it's taking up so much energy. And if we look at client onboarding as one of those problems, it might seem like a good idea that every time you onboard a client, you just email them. It's normal. It's like a message. You're messaging them. Say if you've onboarded overnight 100 clients, can you still just randomly remember one day like, oh yeah, I need to chase up on that client and email them? That system doesn't work anymore. You need a systemized approach as to where each client is in the onboarding process. And if you don't, then you're losing your first month of having that client within your business. You're wasting a lot of time and energy. A lot of capacity is going into this. So essentially what you need to have is a systemized approach, which is as efficient as possible.
Yeah, even deeper than that though, and when I think about automation, especially in today's context, say for example, AI, automation, social media, there is a lot of, I would describe as like hype terminology. Like, oh, be on social media, you know, like do more of it. You need to use AI. You need to automate stuff. All of it being true, but it doesn't necessarily address the fundamentals. So what I'm trying to understand from your perspective, given your background as the builder, as the engineer, as the one who understands how these systems actually work, I find again and again, you can't really automate a broken process.
No.
Like you can't. The reason why I say technology is the least important thing is it's just kind of irrelevant if you don't know what your process is. Like if you can't map your journey to say end to end from first inquiry to first invoice, what that process should look like, no amount of automation is going to fix that. And it can kind of feel like it's easy to look at technology and think that's going to be your savior, but that's not really what happens.
It's a quick fix. It's a plaster on a massive foundational crack.
Yeah.
It's not going to do anything. When it comes to technology, to really implement in technology properly is you need to go back into the foundations to really figure out what you're trying to fix.
Yeah.
You're supposed to completely take technology out of the picture.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be chasing technology.
Yeah.
It should almost be an answer to a pain point that you've had.
I think with that as well, there is also the conversation of like having in-depth knowledge of the process. Like so much so that from the sky all the way down to the dirt, you need to understand. So it does feel like, okay, so most people will say, yep, most conversations will start with an inquiry. What format does that take? It could be a message, it could be an email, it could be a conversation you've had at an event, it could take various forms. The point is that there is some form of inquiry. But you can go even deeper than that and say, what kind of format would that inquiry take from your perspective? So let's say somebody comes along and says, hey, I'm interested in your services. What would be your traditional response to that? How should you approach that? That's one level down. Go even further than that and say, do you have a list of things that you need to say in order to qualify that individual? Because you can't just work with everyone. You might say, like for example, let's say you're a client that I might be able to help. Okay, I could help you. That's separate to, should I work with you? What kind of questions would that involve? So all the way to the very top of like first inquiry to a few levels down, you have to think through that process. And then even further, that's when you start talking about technology.
Yeah, so let's talk about our process.
Okay.
So I think that would bring a little bit more human touch to it. So what do we do? So we have a 3 sort of phase in our service, right? So first would be the sort of consultation or the streamline of your current onboarding process. And that's where we do the investigation of what is your current onboarding process and what would you look like that to be. And we work with 3 frameworks. And recently we have put this into a book chapter about the 3 frameworks we use to start diagnosing your problem as to what are the pain points, how can we fix them, what current CRM, just sort of building a map to the problem. Then comes the second phase, which is now we ask the question, does technology need it to be solved? And sometimes we found that technology is not the answer. No, technology won't fix this problem. And sometimes we found that, yes, technology would actually be great for the specific problem. And then comes that third phase, which is usability. So user testing and a hypercare period. And those are the 3 phases of our business. And let's start talking about, let's forget technology for a second and the user testing, let's forget about that. Let's talk about the first part, which is mapping the process. So we have 3 frameworks.
Okay. So In the most fundamental question you can ask yourself whenever you're taking on any project is not what you want.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a terrible question to ask yourself and to ask any client. What do you want? Because there is a natural assumption in that question, and that assumption is the person knows what they want. 9 times out of 10, people don't.
Your mind almost goes blank
Yeah.
when someone gives you such an open-ended question. Like, I don't even know how to begin to answer this.
You know, that it connects to like that book called the book Never Split the Difference.
Mm-hmm.
And the main lesson I remember from that book is like, when you ask somebody a question, if the answer is yes, they're giving you something.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of actually feels terrible. So like, think of it like, do you agree?
Yes.
Okay. Now that feeling is kind of like I've taken something from you.
Mm.
Now, if I say, do you disagree?
No. Well,
Yeah. How does no feel?
no feels like I've got control.
Feels like you're empowered.
Yeah.
That's like the psychology behind that is really important because that's how humans process information. Yes feels like something's being taken away. No feels like you're empowered to say this is no. It's the same when you're asking somebody what do you want. You're basically asking them to give you something. Versus if you ask the opposite of that question, which is what don't you want, you're empowering them to give you things, to keep things, to say, I don't want that, I don't want this. And the way that works in onboarding, for example, if we were to ask a client, and we've seen this again and again.
Saw this with Rachel.
Yep. If we just asked, like that's a fantastic example, to be honest. If we had asked her, hey, what do you want? Which is what we did.
We did.
It just kind of felt like a bit
The
of
room was silent.
a bit wishy-washy. It wasn't great. Like, yes, it helped. Like we got some answers, but not anything concrete. Nothing that we could really build anything significant off. And then we flipped it and we asked, okay, so let's just try something different. Let's go through everything that the onboarding must not do. Like, what's the exact opposite of a good onboarding? What's a bad onboarding? And that was when we knew we were onto something because she could not help but list out all of the pain points, like quotes going out late, missing visibility. Like when she wants to go on holiday, she can't hand it over to her team because her whole onboarding process is in her head. That's a bad onboarding process.
Mm-hmm.
It's painful for everybody involved.
Follow-ups going out too late.
Right? That's the first framework, just inverse thinking. Ask what is a bad onboarding process. And it doesn't have to be onboarding. Of course, this is what we do. This is our bread and butter. But that first framework is really powerful.
It is really powerful. Inverse thinking is working. It's working with a set of actionable deliverables. You know, you can't really define what's a good onboarding process, like you said. But if you have a what I don't want and you have a list of these, you can just follow them through and make them your measurable successes. You know,
Yep.
your deliverables, like, okay, this onboarding system will have scheduled follow-ups which will automatically go out if there's no response from the client. This onboarding process will have a visible tracker which is accessible from the entire team and shows the status of each client that's been onboarded. These are things which you can actually solve. They're absolutes. They're not wishy-washy.
Yeah.
You can't argue if that has been done and that hasn't been done, but you can argue as to what is a good onboarding system.
Yeah. What about the second framework?
The second framework is strategic bridging.
Yeah. Phil Jessen's strategic bridging.
Yeah. It goes from taking that list of what I don't want and turning them into, like we just spoke about, into, instead of being like, I don't want follow-ups to go out late, you can turn that into follow-ups will go out every 24 hours, 3 days, 7 days, and 14 days.
Yeah.
That becomes a list of actionable. So you know where you are now, which is follow-ups are very messy.
Yep.
And then you have what you want 1 year from now or 2 months from now, whenever this project is finished, is I want follow-ups to go out on these scheduled days all the time.
Yep.
Strategic bridging is pretty good because you can see point A to point B and then have a sort of bridge that takes you there. What are the steps in place to get from point A to point B? For example, what CRM do you use?
Yep.
What sort of ecosystem are you on? Are you on Microsoft or are you on Google?
Yeah.
These are sort of steps you can slowly walk through to the bridge to get to the point that you actually want to be.
You know, on that, not all of them are also important.
They're not. We can talk about follow-ups, but is the follow-ups the same as visibility?
I think visibility is fundamental.
Pretty high.
Yeah, I think most things are downstream of visibility, which actually, that kind of brings me on to the topic of bottlenecks. Not every bridge is important. You don't have to fix every problem. You just have to fix the one problem that solves all the other problems. You might not, for example, you might have, let's say your follow-up's not great. You know, you want to follow up within 24 hours. You follow up sometimes in 72 hours. Maybe you follow up in a week. Maybe if it's really bad, if you follow up in a month. I don't know. But if you dig deeper than that, the question then becomes, why is it taking you so long to follow up? Is it because you're time restricted? Or is it because you didn't know?
Visibility.
So that's the question of constraint. And when you're trying to prioritize which bridges or which areas to focus on with strategic bridging, the question should be, what's the real constraint?
Yeah.
Like that story of, I mean, to be honest, constraint can be applied to a lot of ways. You know, it could be just business in general, like supply and demand. But there is that story, I don't remember which book it's part of, where the author is where they've got a couple of kids and they're realizing that some kids are really fast and some kids are really slow. And obviously you have to keep all the kids together because it's part of a school trip. So instead of trying to figure out a way for all the kids to come together and for the slower kids to move faster, the real constraint is to make sure the first kid at the top of the line is the slowest kid. So the kids are always together because no matter what, the fast kids can obviously walk at the same pace as the slow kids. In addition to that, you have to ask yourself, why is that kid slow? Maybe it's not that they're actually slow. Maybe they're carrying a really heavy bag. Maybe their shoes aren't great. Maybe they have asthma. Maybe they're just sad. There are these constraints that are in place that's causing the group collectively to be dysfunctional and to not move at the same speed as what you would like. But there is only one big fundamental problem. Like you might have a couple of slow kids, you might have a couple of fast kids, you might be a bit lost, you might find it difficult to communicate. But all of this can be solved if the kids are moving together at the same location, same speed. And that one constraint is the slowest kid. And if you move them forward to the top, you solve that constraint and you solve all the subsequent problems.
Exactly. It's asking the right questions. So in those strategic bridges, those are the questions which you need to be asking. These are the sort of investigations that you're taking place. You start asking the very nitty gritty detail between point A and point B. We want all the kids to be together. Some are slow, some are fast. How do we get that? What's happening? These are the questions.
Yeah. It's the question that solves all the other problems.
Yeah.
And I guess it's really hard to find what that question is.
Yeah.
You could look at it from like first principles and say like, if what absolutely needs to be true.
What are the non-negotiables? What are the red lines?
Exactly, the non-negotiables. That's really important. So like, for example, in that kid metaphor, the non-negotiable is that kids always need to be together, full stop, because of their safety. That's a non-negotiable. In the case of onboarding, what's the non-negotiable?
Visibility.
Yeah.
All the problems are symptoms of visibility.
Yeah.
And when we were talking about prioritizing, I think there are two metrics which we can look at, which is how hard is it to solve?
Okay.
And how painful is the problem?
Yeah. So visibility is like the golden goose. It's really hard to solve for, but it's also
The
really
most painful.
Exactly.
And the order of priority should be what's the easiest to solve and the most painful.
Yeah.
So you can get that out of the way.
Yeah.
And then move on to the hardest,
Yeah.
but also the most painful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the things that don't fit in, I thought of an example.
Okay.
It would be like, I want to transfer my ecosystem. For example, I'm on Microsoft and I want to go to Google. Now it's so exciting to want to run and just do that first because technology will just solve all my problems. But you're not going to, that's not needed right now. You haven't solved your visibility problem. You haven't solved your follow-up problem. You haven't solved that. How do you transfer this to the next, to someone else? That your quotes are not going out. How are you pricing?
Third framework.
You mentioned this earlier. Build a skateboard first.
Yeah.
We had a client, we'll call him David,
Okay.
who wanted to price, who had a current method of pricing their clients in a very certain way. He did the 3 packages. And the entire onboarding process was based on quotes, right? It's all about how you're quoting your client, and how that system works. It's based on that. We took the approach of doing the iterative problem. So we decided to first work on the visibility aspect and then slowly work our ways. And every time we change something, it'll be a workable version so David can go around and play with it and get used to the system himself. And then halfway through, David said he didn't want to quote like that anymore.
It's a real pain point.
Yes.
Hourly versus packages.
If we had just jumped into creating the entire onboarding system and everything was half finished and we had a change of direction, everything would have just fallen apart.
Yeah.
I think those are the 3 frameworks. And they sort of tie into each other. It's like a step-by-step process.
What's your favorite ecosystem?
My favorite one is the skateboard one. It just...
No, I meant like, I know that there is an ecosystem that you absolutely hate. like, let's be transparent about it. Like, it's terrible. But why?
Microsoft.
It's not exactly friendly to developers.
No, especially when it comes to automation.
Why is that? Like,
So
we know Google is like, a few steps ahead of Microsoft when it comes to automation. But what is it about Google and what is it about Microsoft that makes one easy and the other one really difficult?
it comes down to something so simple is
Right.
how fast it updates. And the difference between them is not a lot. It's
Right.
30 seconds, a
Okay.
minute, maybe 2 minutes.
Okay.
But Google updates immediately. Okay, so any changes that happen are spread across everybody who has access to that certain file. Say if it's Google Sheets,
Okay.
it's seen immediately. With Microsoft, there seems to be a bit of a delay. You have to refresh it. You have to make sure you've hit like save. It's these small nuances which make it quite hard, and that's neither here or there. Microsoft has been built to be used on the desktop and not on the web version.
Yep.
So that's okay. That's something you sort of have to live with, and it's not the end of the world. But with Microsoft, especially, the second pain point with using them is they're not very friendly to automations, especially the software which we are using, NA10.
Yeah.
NA10 allows us to be open source, and we get to sort of have more control over how the cloud works and where the data is getting stored and etc. And we love that software, but there's no triggers for Microsoft. So that makes it quite difficult. Microsoft either prefer you to be on Zapier or on Power Automate. So it does, with everything, there's a tug of war as to join us. No, join us. We have this.
I feel like that's kind of where technology is going in general. So my immediate feeling is a lot of these, like there's this one group I'm a part of, and they're really into Claude, like really into Claude. And the sort of host of the program said something that has stuck with me since, to be honest. He said Claude is going to be like an OS.
An OS?
Yeah. So like Windows or Mac, Claude is going to be that. So you will have hardware like a laptop, and you would open it up and it would be Claude as the software.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm interested to see what that would do to platforms like Microsoft. So like Google, right? They're fine because they've got Gemini. So they could probably figure that out. Microsoft, I'll be interested to see what that would look like because they've got a partnership with ChatGPT, with OpenAI. I've also heard that they're going to try and develop their own model. Can they develop their own model? How far ahead is the other companies? I don't know, man. And the reason why I'm saying that is when we talk about the friendliness of Microsoft, particularly when it comes to automation. Is it finished?
Is it finished? One could argue saying that the reason that they've come with Power Automate is because they want to own their own automations, right? So to use it, you have to go through their own version of automation for their ecosystem.
Microsoft's unfair advantage is that they have loads of enterprise clients, like loads. Basically, the entire corporate world runs on Microsoft. But what exactly are they running on? Cloud storage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Azure. Microsoft 365, Outlook, PowerPoint, Word, that sort of stuff. Then you have things like Power BI, Power Automate. For example, with cloud,
Mm-hmm.
I think more and more companies are interested in knowing where their data is stored.
Yeah.
They want to know that it's based domestically. Like they wouldn't want their data in a server that's based outside of the UK, for example, which points to a broader trend of autonomy, sovereignty. You don't want something outside of your control, particularly when it comes to things like data privacy. So that already kind of makes their cloud offering questionable. Then their products and services. If, for example, Claude or GPT or Gemini can whip up a PowerPoint as quickly as you can, then PowerPoint isn't really that useful anymore. Because what PowerPoint is a powerful slideshow tool. But you can build
that you can express your thoughts on. But now it comes to the point where large language models, you talk to them and they do that for you.
Exactly. So back to the point around operating system. If something like Claude could become an operating system, it would be really interesting to see what companies like Microsoft do to adapt, to keep themselves relevant. I think as a business, we prefer working with clients who are not on Microsoft.
But a lot of accounting firms are on Microsoft, which leads me to my next question for you,
Okay.
which is accounting firms, the tsunami of AI.
Yeah.
What is happening?
I don't know, man. That's a really hard question to answer.
Because just in this conversation, I feel like I'm drowning. I imagine, what do you think directors of accounting firms are feeling like?
I don't know, man. I really don't. Like, there is a lot of... I think there is a huge amount of fear, for sure. I think it's also the responsibility of directors to know what they're talking about when it comes to technology. They know their business better than anyone else. There is also a responsibility for them to know how that business is now going to interact with technology. You don't want somebody who it just so happens to know technology to come along and just give you advice about what to implement. It's really, it kind of falls on you to figure out, okay, this technology is fantastic. Is it good for me? Maybe not. Maybe yes.
One step above that as well. We've done a lot of market research and we've seen people who, before they've even got to that point, are resistant to the idea of technology being in their business at all.
Oh yeah, we've had, yeah.
You know, people are like, I'll just hire more people to fix this problem.
Thing is, right, the first reaction to that when I heard like hey, how do you add capacity? And the reaction was like, yeah, I'll just hire more people. My first reaction to that was like, come on, man. But now I actually think I understand it.
Interesting.
I do. I think I understand it because I think the cost of AI is actually really high now. And I think it's only going to continue growing. So what's causing AI right now, we know, I feel like, I could be wrong. And if I am, that's okay. But I feel like the current model that AI is running at, like these LLMs, it's obviously not profitable. Like ChatGPT is there's a lot of news around their business model not being profitable. They're committing to trillions of pounds of spend and they only have tens of billions in revenue, not even in profit. So let's say they stopped having, they say they just constantly bombard free users with ads and they jack up all of their subscription prices. They're still not going to figure out how to, they still don't have a sustainable business model. If then we just assume they do find a way to make it profitable using current understanding of how a lot of these businesses run, which is a subscription model, a monthly cost, I think it would be crazy. Like, it would be stupidly expensive. Would it be cheaper than, say, for example, outsourcing to somebody in, Bangladesh or Pakistan or Sri Lanka or like Philippines? I don't think so. That's not necessarily a given. Like I pay £100, £200. I don't remember how much I pay for Claude. I think it's the same for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there is somebody somewhere in the world that will gladly do what Claude is doing for us for the same price.
With less hallucinations.
With more contextual awareness.
I think the AI bubble seems like it's starting to deflate a little.
You think so?
I mean, when you look at businesses right now, I forgot where we saw it, but we saw that 80% of businesses who have implemented AI have seen a drop in productivity.
Really?
Yeah, that AI has not actually helped with their productivity levels. And that's because there's no direction. People are just throwing large language models at a problem. But even in like healthcare, in where I work on the day job, we are implementing machine learning. Machine learning is not large language models. They're no ChatGPT. It's just the technology behind it which learns patterns.
You know what it is in that context? I'm not surprised actually, now that I think about it. I think the reason why it's not surprising, a lot of these models, particularly for myself, when I first started using them, I got so excited by what can I do that I forgot what I wanted to do.
That's exactly it.
And I can imagine that working in corporate as well. I can imagine that being the case. Sometimes also there is like AI fatigue, like decision fatigue, I guess. It's decision fatigue, not AI. It's decision, because you're constantly having to double check what AI is doing for you, what the model is doing for you. And you already have a lot of decisions to make in the day. But like if you're asking something to do something for you again and again and again, you kind of become a control freak, like a micromanager. On the flip side of it, like let's say if it's a human, right? You tell it to do something and it does something wrong. At least it's a human that you can hold responsible.
And they have feelings, right? So if someone tells me like, hey, you've done that wrong, can you go fix it? I will work above and beyond to make sure that it's right, and I'll do the double checking myself. With something like AI, they'll just keep giving you the wrong sort of answer again and again and again.
Yeah.
It turns into this like mini war you are having with your language model,
Yeah. I think, to be honest, if we wrap up this conversation, I think for our first podcast episode, I think we've covered so many topics. The main thing I'm taking away from this conversation is it's way more important to focus on the process than it is the products that you choose to use. Like that's how it feels to me. I think focus on what you don't want. Focus on prioritizing the bottleneck and working cycles. Like, don't try and boil the ocean. Onboarding is a small, very niche example that we are specialists in, but a lot of the lessons can be applied even broader to that. Like, if you had to wrap up the conversation to, let's say we're in a conversation with the director, say you have 15 people on payroll, what would you say to them?
I couldn't have said what you said better. You said it so articulately well. Look at the process, not the software.
Yeah. Process over product.
Process over product.
Okay. Well, that wraps up our first episode of the Accounting OS show.
Okay.
Wonderful.